Imagine 5 years from now. You're surrounded by people, but no one actually counts on you for important decisions. Not because you're incompetent, but because they learned you'll always prioritize not bothering anyone and accept the majority's decision. This is what Machiavelli would call a collapse of presence, because you confused kindness with fear of conflict. It seems kind, but it's actually what turns you into a social accessory, present but irrelevant. If this pattern continues, you lose your voice in relationships. Your influence at work evaporates and your opinion becomes just an echo of what others already think. In 30 minutes, I'll show you how Machiavelli teaches you to differentiate true kindness from fear-driven kindness and how to regain respect without becoming bitter. The detail that changes everything is that respect isn't born from how many people you please, but from how many you're willing to disappoint. Stay until the end, because I'll show you exactly how to do this without becoming cruel. Just non-negotiable. But before understanding how to escape this trap, you need to see how you fell into it, and the origin is more subtle than you imagine. The person who never says no is saying yes to their own destruction. It happens without you noticing. Someone asks a favor, you say yes. Another person asks for your time, you say yes. Someone else crosses your boundaries, and you, once again, say yes. Not because you really want to help in all these cases, but because your first reaction is to avoid the discomfort of refusing. And here's the cycle that traps you. You give momentary approval to receive momentary approval. But what you don't see is that with each automatic yes, the people around you stop respecting you. They might even like you, but respect is something else. Respect is born when you demonstrate that your time, your energy, and your attention have value, and what's always available has no value. The math is simple and brutal. The more available you are, the less valuable you seem. Not because people are bad, but because that's how the human brain works. It values what's scarce, what has cost, what requires effort to obtain. And the worst part isn't just the loss of respect that comes from outside. It's the loss that happens inside. Because every time you say yes, when you wanted to say no, you're telling yourself that others' needs matter more than yours. And over time you start believing it. But there's something even more dangerous than having no boundaries. It's believing you're being noble when you're actually being a coward. Machiavelli knew how to distinguish the generous man from the frightened man, and the difference lies in a single question. Are you doing this because you want to, or because you're afraid of what happens if you don't? It seems simple, but this question reveals everything. Because true kindness is a choice. You look at the situation, evaluate what's being asked, and consciously decide whether you want to help. And most importantly, you can change your mind. You can say no today even though you said yes yesterday. You can choose to help this person but not that one. You can have criteria. You can have boundaries. And when you do this, you don't feel guilt eating away at you inside. But when you act out of fear, there's no real choice. There's only the terror of being rejected, of being seen as selfish, of losing approval, of creating conflict. And that terror pushes you toward yes, before you even have time to think whether you want to say yes. You're not being generous, you're being hostage to your own insecurity, and there are clear signs that show the difference. The person who acts out of true kindness is selective. They help when it makes sense, when the situation deserves it, when they really want to. And when they say no, they don't feel that paralyzing guilt. They feel peace, because they know they made a conscious choice based on what's right for them at that moment. The person who acts out of fear can't be selective. They say yes to everyone, in every situation. Even when exhausted, even when being exploited, even when they know they should refuse. And when they finally manage to say no, guilt comes like a wave. That feeling they did something wrong, that they disappointed someone, and that they need to justify and compensate. That's the trap. You think you're being a good person, but you're actually being controlled by fear. And the worst part is that this is noticeable. It doesn't need to be said in words. It shows in your posture, in your rush to agree, in your anxiety when there's conflict. People pick up these signals, even without knowing they're picking them up. They sense you're not helping because you want to. You're helping because you can't do otherwise. And when they realize this, even if only at an instinctive level, they stop valuing you. Machiavelli wrote something uncomfortable. The generous prince who cannot stop being so is not generous. He's a slave to his own image. He's trapped. And so are you every time you say yes out of fear of saying no. Now that you know the difference, you need to understand why this fear exists. And the answer will reveal the trap society has placed you in since childhood. You were trained to believe that rejection is death, and as long as you believe that, you'll be manipulable. Go back thousands of years. Your ancestors lived in small tribes, and being expelled from the tribe meant certain death. Without the group, you didn't survive predators, cold, hunger. So the brain developed a powerful alarm system. Any sign of social rejection activated the same panic as a physical threat. Because in that context, rejection was a physical threat. This system is still inside you. Your primitive brain doesn't know you live in a modern society where being rejected by someone doesn't mean your death. It continues treating disapproval as an emergency. It continues triggering the same alarms your ancestors felt when they sensed the tribe was turning its back on them. And modern society doesn't help. Since childhood, you've heard messages that reinforce this fear. Being excluded from any group was treated as tragedy. Love often came with conditions. Be obedient, be pleasant, don't cause problems, or we'll stop approving of you. Everywhere the message was clear. Be liked, don't create friction, or you'll suffer the consequences. So you grew up learning a false equation. Being rejected equals being in danger, and your body believes it. When someone shows disapproval, your heart races. When you think about saying no and imagine the person's reaction, your breathing changes. When someone criticizes you, you feel anxiety disproportionate to what's actually happening. The result is that you live treating social conflicts as if they were life or death threats. And when any possibility of displeasing someone triggers this level of alarm in your system, you do what anyone would do facing a threat. You give in. You avoid. You retreat. You say yes before even thinking. This isn't character weakness, it's programming. Your brain is running software that was useful 10,000 years ago, but today makes you vulnerable. Because when you react to disapproval as if it were real danger, anyone who understands this can manipulate you. They just need to threaten to reject you, exclude you, disapprove of you, and you give in. And that's exactly what manipulative people do. They sense this fear in you and turn it into leverage. Let me show you how social manipulation engineering works. People who please too much are the preferred targets of those who know how to play the social game. And you don't even notice when you're being used. It starts small. It always starts small. Someone asks for something that seems reasonable, something you'd do for anyone. You help, and then comes the test. They ask for something a bit bigger, something that already invades your time more significantly. You hesitate for a second, but say yes. And in that moment, they already know. They already know you don't have clear boundaries. They already know they can push. And then the demands increase, not all at once, because that would be obvious, but gradually. A favor here, another there. Always with that tone that makes you feel refusing would be cruel. They use phrases that activate your guilt. I thought you were my friend. So-and-so would do this for me. You're the only person who can help me. And each of these phrases is a lever. They press exactly at the point where you're most vulnerable, which is the fear of being seen as selfish. What you don't realize is that while they're using you, they're also losing respect for you. Because people don't respect those they can control. They might like the convenience you offer, might get used to the fact that you'll always give in, but deep down at an instinctive level, they see you as weak. And the worst part is that you become predictable. They know exactly what to say to make you give in. They know which buttons to press. They know that if they pretend disappointment, you'll run to fix it. They know that if they compare you to someone else, you'll try to prove you're better. They know that if they play the friendship or family card, you'll ignore your own boundaries. Machiavelli observed this repeatedly. Whoever can be used will be discarded when no longer useful, because the relationship isn't based on mutual respect, it's based on function. You're useful while you serve, and when you no longer serve or when someone more convenient appears, you become disposable. But here's the part that really hurts. It's not just the obvious manipulators who treat you this way. Now you understand how the game works against you. But Machiavelli discovered something even more brutal. It's not just manipulators who disrespect you. It's everyone, even good people. Even people who love you stop respecting you when you have no boundaries. Not out of malice, but out of human nature. This is the truth no one wants to face. You can be surrounded by good people, people who really care about you, people who would never consciously use you. And still they'll stop respecting you if you have no boundaries. Not because they decided to do this, because respect isn't a conscious decision. It's an instinctive response. The human brain evaluates value all the time. It does this without asking permission, without thinking, without even noticing. And one of the most basic ways it uses to evaluate value is through scarcity. What's difficult to get seems more valuable. What's always available seems less important. It's not a moral question. It's a question of how the system works. So when you're always available, always saying yes, always prioritizing others above yourself, what happens? People start assuming without even noticing that what you offer has little value, that your time isn't that important, that your needs can wait, that you're the type of person who'll always be there. So there's no need to make an effort to keep you around. And then comes the paradox that destroys those who try to please everyone. The more you give, the less they value. The more you sacrifice, the less they recognize. The more you put others first, the more they put you last. You see this happening in small signs. When there's an important decision, they don't consult you. When there's a schedule conflict, they assume you'll adjust. When they need to cancel something, you're the first option because they know you'll understand. And when you finally express a need, they're surprised, as if it never occurred to them that you also have limits. And the hardest thing to accept is that they're not doing this maliciously. They didn't wake up and decide to disrespect you. They simply started treating you according to the value you demonstrated having. And you demonstrated, through your repeated actions, that your time, your energy, and your needs come after everyone else's. This isn't injustice. It's psychology. The human brain respects what it perceives as valuable. And value is linked to scarcity, to cost, to boundaries. When you have none of these elements, you stop being respected, even by people who love you. Now that you know why it happens, comes the question that really matters. How to escape this trap without becoming someone cold or cruel? The answer lies in the difference between authority and aggression. The person with authority doesn't say no to everything. They say no to what doesn't deserve their yes. Here's the difference most people don't understand. Authority isn't about being difficult. It's not about refusing everything and creating distance. It's about having criteria. It's about evaluating what's being asked and deciding whether it deserves your time, your energy, your attention. And when it doesn't deserve it, saying no without carrying guilt. Aggression has no criteria. The aggressive person says no reactively, as defense, as attack. They refuse because they're angry, because they want to hurt, because they're tired of everything. But authority has clarity. It knows how to distinguish the legitimate request from the invasion. It knows how to separate the person who really needs from the one who just wants convenience. And there are clear situations where no becomes necessary. When someone asks for your time, but never offered the same to you. When the request invades your boundaries in a way you know will drain you. When giving in at that moment will only reinforce a pattern of disrespect that's already been happening. In these cases, saying yes is betraying yourself. But how do you do this without seeming cruel? Without becoming someone you don't want to be? The answer is in the execution. When you say no, you don't need to over-justify. Long justification is a disguised apology. It's you trying to convince the other person that you have the right to refuse. But you don't need to convince anyone. You just need to be firm. It won't be possible. I can't do that now. That's not something I can help with. Simple phrases, direct, without beating around the bush. And most importantly, without emotional compensation. You don't need to soften your refusal by making the person feel better. You don't need to offer detailed explanations or alternatives. You can simply maintain firmness without hostility. And there's a limit here you need to understand. Saying no builds respect up to the point where it becomes clear you have criteria, that you protect your space, that you're not manipulable. But if you go past this point and start refusing even reasonable things just to prove you can, then it becomes childish, it becomes petulant, and the respect you were building disappears. So the secret isn't saying no to everything. It's saying no when it makes sense, when the request has no reciprocity, when the person is clearly testing you, when you know that giving in there will weaken you. And when you do this consistently, something changes. People start valuing more when you say yes, because now they know your yes means something. And when your no has clarity, your time starts gaining weight. People realize that getting your attention requires something more than simply asking. When you're always available, your presence loses meaning. Machiavelli knew what's abundant isn't valued. Think of anything you truly value. It could be an object, an experience, a person. What makes you value it? Part of the answer is always in the fact that it's not something you can have at any moment. It has cost, it has scarcity, it requires effort or right timing, and your brain, without you noticing, uses this difficulty of access as a value indicator. The same principle applies to you. When you're always available, when you immediately respond to every message, when you cancel your plans whenever someone needs you, when you show up at every event even if you don't want to be there, you're signaling something. You're saying without words that your time has no cost, that your presence isn't scarce, that getting your attention requires no effort. And people absorb this. Not consciously, but they absorb it. They start treating you as if you were an abundant resource, as if they could count on you at any time, so they don't need to value the moments when you're present. After all, you'll always be there next time too. But when you create deliberate scarcity, everything changes. You don't immediately respond to every message. You let a few hours pass, sometimes a day. Not because you're playing a game, but because you have other things happening in your life that matter. You don't cancel your plans every time someone asks. If you already had something scheduled, that takes priority. And you're not at every social event. You choose where your presence really makes sense. The result of this isn't rejection, it's appreciation. People start noticing that when you're present, it's because you chose to be. That when you respond, it's because you wanted to respond. That when you say yes, it's because you really mean yes. And this makes each interaction with you carry more weight. But there's a mistake that destroys everything. If you're doing this out of resentment, if you're isolating yourself because you're hurt or wanting to punish someone, people feel it. And then it's not strategy, it's emotional manipulation. Deliberate scarcity works when it comes from a place of self-respect, not revenge. When you're choosing to protect your time because it matters, not because you want to make someone suffer. And you'll know you're doing it right when people start valuing more the moments when you show up, when they consult you more carefully, when they show more consideration for your time. This isn't selfishness, it's teaching people how to treat you. Boundaries protect you from outside. Scarcity makes you valued, but neither solves the problem at the root. The emotional dependence that makes you constantly seek validation from others. The social game belongs to whoever needs less. And Machiavelli knew that visible emotional need is visible weakness. There's an invisible dynamic that happens in every human interaction. Someone shows more need for approval, more urgency to be accepted, more desperation for validation. And that person, even without realizing it, hands over power to the other. Because when you show you need someone's approval, you just gave that person control over how you feel. And there are signs that give this away. When you ask too much if the person liked it, if everything's okay if you did something wrong, when you immediately change your behavior based on how someone reacted, when you're constantly monitoring the other person's expression, trying to catch any sign of disapproval to correct before it becomes a real problem. Each of these behaviors screams a message: I need your approval to feel good about myself. And this is read as weakness, not consciously, but it is, because you're revealing you're seeking from others something that should come from within you. And when this becomes evident, even without intention, respect starts to evaporate, because respect is born when you demonstrate your whole alone, that you don't need external validation to know your own value. The inversion happens when you learn to validate yourself first. When you do something, you internally evaluate whether it was aligned with your values, with your intentions, with what you wanted to achieve, and if it was, you feel peace with it, regardless of others' reactions. You're not chasing approval signs. You're not adjusting your posture based on every micro-expression you catch on someone's face. This isn't coldness. It's not emotional disconnection. It's emotional self-sufficiency. It's you having within yourself the capacity to evaluate your own actions, without depending on constant feedback from others to know if you're on the right path. And when you develop this, something strange happens. People start gravitating toward you. It seems contradictory, but it works like this. The less you show you need their approval, the more they want to give you that approval. The more comfortable you seem alone, the more they want to be near you. Because emotional self-sufficiency is magnetism. It's rare, it's valuable, and people notice when someone has this. But there's a limit here too. If you cross the line and become so distant you seem disconnected, that you don't genuinely care about anything or anyone, then you lose the magnetism and just become someone cold. The balance is in caring about people without needing them, in valuing connection without depending on it for your sense of worth. You already know what to do, but now comes the part most people can't stand, dealing with guilt. Because when you start establishing boundaries, your brain will try to sabotage you. This is the question that paralyzes you, and Machiavelli would give you an answer you don't want to hear. If they abandon you for having boundaries, they were never by your side. When you start establishing boundaries, the fear that arises is real. You imagine people drifting away, relationships ending, being alone. And this fear makes sense because throughout your life, the strategy you used to keep people close was having no boundaries. It was always being available, always saying yes, always putting others first. So when you think about changing this, it feels like you're removing the only foundation keeping your relationship standing. But here's the hard truth no one wants to face. If a relationship only exists because you have no boundaries, that's not a relationship. It's a functional dependency. The person isn't there for you. They're there for what you provide, for the convenience, for the ease, for the fact that you'll always give in, always be available, always put their needs above yours. And there's a clear difference between people who'll stay and those who'll leave when you establish boundaries. People who truly value you might be surprised at first. They might need time to adjust, but they respect it. They understand. And the relationship improves because now there's real reciprocity, not just you giving all the time. People who punish you for having boundaries reveal exactly what they always were. They get irritated. They accuse you of having changed, of becoming selfish, of not being the person you were anymore. But translating what they're really saying, you stopped serving me and I don't like it. These people don't want you, they want the function you performed. And yes, you might lose some of these people. You might lose relationships you thought were solid, but that loss isn't real loss. It's a filter. It's the universe removing from your life those who were only there to use you. And this, although it hurts in the moment, is liberation. The paradox is that the fear of losing people makes you lose the only thing that really matters, yourself. Because while you live without boundaries to keep others around, you're sacrificing who you are, what you need, what you want. You're trading your integrity for company. And in the end, even surrounded by people, you're alone. Because no one there knows who you really are. They only know the version you created to please them. But there's another objection even more treacherous, the one that comes from within. What if you're being selfish? Machiavelli would make a distinction few understand. Selfishness is taking what isn't yours. Self-respect is protecting what is. The guilt you feel when you establish boundaries didn't appear out of nowhere. It was planted. Since childhood, you've heard messages that confuse these two things. Don't be selfish, think of others. Be generous, put people first. Sacrifice yourself for those you love. And gradually, without realizing it, you internalize the idea that defending your own boundaries was wrong. That protecting your time, your energy, your space was being a bad person. But there's a huge difference between the two. Selfishness is when you invade others' space to get what you want. It's when you disrespect others' boundaries. When you use people. When you take more than what's offered to you. Selfishness is about taking. Self-respect is when you protect your own space without invading others. It's when you say no to something that would harm you, but without forcing anyone to do anything. It's when you establish that certain things aren't acceptable to you, but leave others free to make their own choices. Self-respect is about protecting. And here's the test. If you can say no without attacking, without punishing, without trying to control the other person's reaction, you're exercising self-respect. But if the person accuses you of selfishness just because you said no, pay attention to what's really happening. They're trying to use guilt as a control tool. They're trying to make you feel bad for not giving in. When someone says you've changed, that you're not the same person anymore, understand what's being said between the lines. You stopped serving me and I don't like it. When they accuse you of selfishness for having boundaries, what they're revealing is that they were comfortable with your lack of boundaries, that they benefited from it. And now that you're no longer allowing this, they're trying to manipulate you back to the old pattern. And the hardest truth of all, if you can't say no without being attacked, that's not a relationship. It's exploitation. Healthy relationships allow both people to have boundaries. They allow you to take care of yourself without being punished for it. They allow real reciprocity. You're not selfish for not wanting to be used. You're not selfish for protecting your time. You're not selfish for refusing to do something that would harm you. You're responsible. Because when you take care of yourself, you have more to give genuinely, not out of obligation or fear. And that's the opposite of selfishness. You understood the mechanisms, learned the behaviors, dissolved the objections. Now only one thing remains: identity transformation. Because authority isn't what you do, it's who you become. Machiavelli doesn't teach techniques, he teaches transformation. And the person who finishes this video can no longer be the same one who started. There's a moment in every real transformation where you realize you no longer fit in the old version of yourself, where the behaviors you had, the automatic reactions, the way you related to the world, all of it stops making sense. And you're at that moment now. The person you were lived in fear. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of not being loved. And because of that fear, you were always available, always giving in, always putting others first. You measured your value by how many people you could please, by how many demands you could meet, by how much you could sacrifice without complaining. But the person you're becoming understands something different. Understands that respect doesn't come from pleasing, it comes from being taken seriously. That authority isn't born from always being present. It's born from choosing where your presence matters. That value isn't in abundance. It's in selectivity. This new version of you feels comfortable with disapproval when you know your boundaries are legitimate. Doesn't seek external validation to know if you're doing the right thing. And there's a defining moment in this transformation. It's the first time you say it won't be possible, and don't explain. Don't over-justify. Don't emotionally compensate. You simply maintain your position and endure the uncomfortable silence that comes after. In that moment, you cross a line. You exit who you were and enter who you're choosing to be. And with this new identity come new patterns. You start evaluating requests by real merit, not by the emotional pressure that comes with them. You become capable of maintaining your stance even when someone shows disapproval. Your presence in situations becomes intentional, not automatic. You're where you chose to be, not where fear pushed you. But some things become impossible now. You can no longer pretend agreement just to avoid tension. You can no longer sacrifice your priorities for others' convenience without it being a conscious choice. You can no longer measure your worth by how much others approve of you. These things stopped being options because you became someone different. And here's the ritual that seals this transformation. Next time someone asks you for something that violates your boundaries, respond only, "It won't be possible." And don't explain. Endure the silence that comes after. That silence is uncomfortable, but it's where you build your authority. Each time you endure that discomfort without giving in, you place another brick in the foundation of who you're becoming. You don't need to try to please everyone. You need to learn to disappoint the right people. And when you master this, you'll discover something Machiavelli always knew. Respect doesn't come from how many love you, but from how many take you seriously. And being taken seriously begins the moment you take yourself seriously first.